China has been one of the world's most populated places for centuries. Today, more than 1,400,000,000 people live in a territory almost as large as all of Europe. But something strange happens here. If we drew a line on the map, we would realize that half of the country is practically empty. And that's because, according to the 7th National Census of China, 94% of the population lives east of what is now known as the Huanyong line. But then, what about the other side? Our day starts at -6 degrees Celsius in a small village called Chigou. We heard there are under 10,000 people here, a mix of Tibetans and Han. A different Tibetan language, the Amdo version, is spoken here, and our guide understands both. So now I'm going to ask him to explain both the place we're in and the difference in the languages. Chris, good morning, nice to see you again. How do you say good morning in Tibetan? Timo, just in case I wasn't clear, here is the name of the village, which is Chigou. Here you have the name in Tibetan, and here you have the name in Mandarin, but if that wasn't enough, here you also have it in Korean. So, all the signs are really interesting, and they're a reflection of the local mix that exists around here. It turns out that we're in Yeliguan, which for many years was part of something known as the Tea and Horse Road. That means this was the key trade corridor between central China and the Tibetan region. And therefore, there were many cultures that dominated this area. The first of them were the Tuyuhun, who were a nomadic tribe that roamed the region and previously controlled the pass. However, they were eventually displaced by the Tang dynasty, then the Mongols, and later the Tibetans. And in the end, there was a mixture that resulted in most of the population being Han. And well, now let's get to know the town and see how the local people live. But you'll notice that here people have much darker skin. And that's because we're more than 2,000 meters above sea level, and the sun burns much stronger here. So people come very covered up, they wear hats, they wear bandanas, and that's to protect themselves from the sun. Which is probably something we should have done. Hello, how are you? Look, this is medicine. And it was really interesting because they speak the local language. They don't speak Tibetan or Mandarin, but their own language. I can't understand them at all. What are they talking about? The language is extremely hard. It's really interesting because if you drive 2 hours in any direction, nobody speaks that dialect anymore. And that's how complicated this country is. That's why I always tell you that Chinese is so complicated that not even the locals speak it. They're telling us that here they use QR codes instead of addresses. Scanning this QR code gives you the address and all relevant information about the house. Look, they're letting us through. Thank you. Look, here's their little kitchen, here's their little bed. Really nice. She invited us in for a cup of tea. We saw her house, her kitchen, her bedroom. She lives simply but peacefully and looked very happy. So no one can say we aren't showing you the real China. This is the town center, with the government palace and local government offices. It's a very small town. Now you can't say that I only take you to the big cities because I've got goosebumps. Being in such a remote place that probably nobody knows about, join me to check out a little corner store in this remote mountain town. Look at the local store. Here you can buy all kinds of snacks. Obviously, there's no OXXO here, nor are there any chains like Family Mart in the rest of China. Here, there's just the corner store and that's it. Now we're heading to Yehai, which means Sea of Pines or Ocean of Pines in Chinese. We've reached the Sea of Pines after a spectacular journey. The views are very beautiful and I can't imagine how it would look covered in snow because yes, it does snow here during the winter. Although we arrived a bit early because now it's mid-November and when it really gets cold is around January or February. And the guide says that's when you really get to enjoy the show, which today has become a 5A site. In China, tourist sites are ranked by how many A's they have. The more A's they have, the better and more recommended the site is. If what you're looking for are cities and lots of stimulation, this definitely won't be the place, but if you like nature, tranquility and more authentic people, this is definitely a place for you. So let me go down to the lake to show you why this is the famous lake. Yehai, as I mentioned before, Yehai means Sea of Pines, and I don't think I need to explain why. In the back you can see all the pine trees which, although they're dry now because of winter, in spring and summer probably look like the Swiss Alps. By the way, the guide told us that this valley was formed because of the earthquakes in the area, since apparently this is a seismic zone. The valley opened up and slowly filled with rainwater. And eventually it became what is today one of the most beautiful lakes in the country. A protected species, the giant salamander, lives here. This is the one we have. Not sure if it exists in Mexico, but it definitely didn't where I lived. Another interesting fact about this lake is its water gourd shape, known as hulu in Chinese and widely used in Chinese medicine. Here's another picture since we don't see this often in our country. I found it interesting that we saw many pyramid-shaped flags called lungta in Chinese which resemble Tibetan temples. We could call them that. I think this perfectly reflects the fascinating cultural mix in this part of China. Because at the top you have a very beautiful Buddhist temple and all around you can see the colorful pyramids of the Tibetans. Being here, I find it curious that the place is named the Sea of Pines when actually the most prominent shrub is this one, from here. In Chinese it's known as shaji and in Spanish as sea buckthorn. And the name makes sense because if you notice it's full of little thorns. But, as they say, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Because even though these plants are full of thorns, they are very important for this country. On one hand, an orange sour berry grows on them that is highly nutritious and has been part of local diets for thousands of years. And on the other hand, because it is extremely resistant to all kinds of conditions. For this reason, it has been used in the desert areas of northern China to fight desertification and reforest the regions. And it's impressive what they've achieved with this small shrub, which at first glance seems dangerous and ugly. We're dealing with something familiar. I don't even know if it's Danxia or Chibi because she said Chibi and the guide said Danxia. But now we have the explanation, which is good. The key point is it's called Red Cliff Valley in English, located in the Danxia Valley, and is famous for its beautiful reddish color. And our walk today will probably look like this. They told us it's about an hour-long walk. And keep in mind that we're at 3,000 meters above sea level, so it could get a little tricky. Welcome to the Danxia Valley. All of these are places whose existence I was unaware of until just a few weeks ago. But good old Chris did a great job finding these kinds of places. Just imagine how many places there are still undiscovered in this country. There must still be thousands and thousands, but that's our job, to be able to show them to you. Here's the entrance, but it doesn't seem to be open yet. I don't know if it's just starting to get popular or if we came at an unusual time, but honestly there aren't any people here besides us. Maybe it's the cold since it's -7 degrees but feels like -10. And look how beautiful the entrance is. They put up a wall here to welcome you, which is called the Red Wall. As expected, the color of the stone is like brick. There's no animal more important to the local people than the yak. As far as I know, yaks are quite gentle, but I'm not sure. Maybe each one has its own character, so I don't want to get too close, but they are majestic animals that fascinate me because of their resilience and their ability to adapt to extreme climates and even more extreme altitudes. And besides, I admire them a lot because they provide the locals not only with their fur for clothing but also with their meat, their milk, and even their dung, since it can be used as fuel, and many times it's even better than wood. But it's not just their dung that's used as fuel, since the locals also use their fat to make candles, which are usually used in Buddhist temples. Now we are in front of the Decree Cliff, which is one of the most representative landscapes of the area, since this whole reddish wall is made of classic rock, formed by soft layers of sand and minerals like iron and calcium, which were mixed irregularly millions of years ago. But what's really curious is the name, since it reminds people of an imperial decree from the Ming dynasty. And to really see the shape of the imperial scroll, you have to stand here since it looks like an open scroll. Those are the scrolls, the 2 columns you see there. That makes sense, but I think it takes a lot of creativity and free time. We climbed for about half an hour to reach the Yeliguan forest, and here the temperature is between 4 and 7 degrees lower than the last place we were. And it's pretty obvious because here it's covered with snow and the river is already starting to freeze. In fact, here we have a Tibetan prayer wheel, which in its original form should be in constant motion, since each turn of the wheel represents an Om Mani. And Padme Hum is a prayer, a blessing sent out to the world with each turn. And for that there's a mill underneath that turns with the water, but right now it's frozen. This place feels like being inside the movie Frozen, and there's not much noise except for the people who are with us. It feels like you're lost in the forest, which is really nice. Now the river is quite dangerous because this isn't as thick as it looks. Look, with a rock you're already reaching the water. Let's see how thick the river is right now. I don't think it's very thick. Okay, quite a bit. He's going to feed the deer. He says they're pretty aggressive, so he's going to feed them. Oh, they eat corn like popcorn. It's fascinating to listen to the conversation between the two of them because they're mixing Mandarin with Tibetan. Both of them are Tibetan, but they're from different parts of China. She's local and he's from Qinghai. And it turns out that they both speak a different type of Tibetan which really can't be understood. But I was told the Tibetan spoken in Lhasa differs from what they both speak. Apparently there are various types of Tibetan with different accents and idioms that make communication challenging. Remember, this series is called Discovering Unexplored China? Well, right now we are in the center of Yeliguan, which is probably one of the most remote cities I have visited in this country. And only 10,000 people live here, of which a few belong to the Tibetan minority and most belong to the Han majority. But being here is a really curious feeling because this is one of the few places in this country where you can't order a Didi, or what would be an Uber. In other countries, there's no subway, no buses, and the only way you can get around is by using local taxis, which are hard to find. However, the fact that this place is so far from the rest of the country has its benefits. Among them is that in the center you feel an unusual sense of peace. You rarely hear noise except sometimes from passing tractors. And it has one of the most beautiful natural areas in the country. It's no coincidence that this city has been awarded 5 A's, which is like having 5 stars as a tourist destination. Today, the government heavily promotes it to attract economic benefits from tourism. And that's why we're here today, for the day. We went to visit some of its most impressive attractions, and now we're in the city center. That's how small this town is. How many people are in the center? Only a few kids are walking around. That tells you how safe this place must be. And there's the grandpa going around in reverse. I don't know why, but as long as he's exercising, it's fine. This sign clearly shows the local culture. Almost everyone here is Tibetan, wearing very beautiful outfits, and they're probably advertising a show that takes place in this city, which must be very popular. Well, let's continue with the trip. They were already leaving the little girl. Well, welcome to Yeliguan, beautiful river, amazing views. Hello, hello, hello. People look at me like I'm an alien here. Hello? A great guy, and he brought us to the local supermarket since it already got dark. I think you can't see anything anymore. Let's go to the supermarket. I've been looking for some chocolate for a while now. Look, we finally found chocolate. I'm taking a bunch since options are limited. This is a rural supermarket, you could say. It's not a big supermarket, almost everything here is Chinese. We just met different ethnic minorities. The cashier was Hezhuo, who is Muslim, and the lady was Khan. She was carrying her Tibetan rosary, very beautiful and quite nice. People here are willing to start a conversation, because since it doesn't happen much in these places, when a foreigner with a camera shows up, it makes them curious. I like places where anyone will talk to you. Conversations like the pace of life are slower here, so people aren't in the rush they would be elsewhere. Shinle. Shinle, if you want to start a conversation with someone, they take off right away, just so you get an idea of the kind of place we're in. It's 6:24 in the evening and there is practically no one on the streets. This is a main avenue in town where you can stand without any problem. But I wanted to come see this mural, which looked really beautiful, just out of pure curiosity to come over here. And I would like to eat something local here, but they prepared dinner for us at the hotel and I don't want to leave them hanging. So we'll have to come back. We continue our journey through Gansu province, and right now we are in the middle of the Tibetan plateau at -7 degrees Celsius. And if we're here, it's because we're on the road, heading to a new place whose name I can't pronounce, but our guide promises it's going to be spectacular. But to get there, we still have 3 hours of travel ahead, and most likely the views will look a lot like what we're seeing right now. Let's begin the journey. It's going to be a ride. We stopped in a Tibetan village. I don't understand the name because it's literally in Tibetan. Look, those seem to be Chinese characters in a Tibetan style, but I still can't understand them. Let's ask Chris. Look, here is the name of the town, Ejer. Let me show you this lovely small town. Its name is Ejer. It's likely a transliteration from Tibetan. Since most of the people who live here belong to the Tibetan ethnic minority, in total this place has a population of 192 people, and since 2019 it has become a model of rural tourism. That means the government is providing them with support to attract people from all over China and boost the local economy. Because here, it's not like there's a lot to do, if you think about it. We're in the middle of what in English is known as grasslands, or plains, which are far from the big cities where there isn't much infrastructure, and where previously the main economic activity was cattle ranching. And historically, the Tibetan culture has been a nomadic people who were constantly moving from one place to another in search of better pastures. But today, this is evolving. It's so beautiful because it allows us to get to know one of the most interesting cultures in the history of humanity. This is the main hotel in the village, but more than a hotel, we could say it's like an Airbnb, which in Chinese translates as minsu. It's decorated in traditional Tibetan style, which is beautiful. There are wooden stairs and many people upstairs, so let me show you the rooms. Here is what they look like. Obviously, it's very cold, so they use mattresses that you plug in and they heat up by themselves. Let's go upstairs, that's the main room. Now I'm going to show you the 5-star rooms, where they are in the room or in the bedroom. Here are the luxury rooms, let's go in and take a look. In Tibetan culture, the same space is used for both sleeping and eating. You could say it's a multi-purpose room, but it's definitely not suitable for people with back problems because the locals don't use mattresses like the ones we're used to. Interestingly though, they believe this is actually better for your back. Look at the babies, how they're going around with their bicycles. Look how cute the babies are. They don't understand anything I'm saying. The gentleman has 2 children and 10 grandchildren. What a happy life. My dad would love to have that many grandchildren. Right now he has none. Behind us are the classic prayer wheels, which are so important in Tibetan culture. And according to the local culture, spinning them is considered very good luck since each turn of these wheels represents a prayer, and all of them have the symbol of Om Mani Padme Hum inscribed, which means blessings, and when you spin the wheel, it's like sending blessings to the rest of the world. Now we are in the city of Hezhuo, which, if we translate it into Spanish, would be the city of cooperation. Hezhuo is a county-level city that belongs to the Gannan Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture in Gansu province. This city has approximately 100,000 inhabitants, of which more than 50% belong to the Tibetan ethnic minority. Thus, the local architecture and temples reflect this wonderful people's traditions. But the reason why this place is so famous is because here you can find the pavilion of Buddha Milarepa, which is the one we have behind me, which is a 9-story pagoda dominating the city's landscape. And the thing is, from practically any point in this city, you can see how the pagoda rises above the city, especially because it's located in a high part of the outskirts. There are a lot of pigeons outside the temple, and wow, I can see that the local people came out. Look, the man came to throw them some bread. I'm leaving the temple. And it's truly impressive what you can see inside, since every floor is filled with images and symbolism from Tibetan culture. The detail in every corner is incredible. Recording inside isn't allowed, out of respect for the religion and Tibetan culture, even though I asked for permission. How people do their prostrations here in front of the temple. And I wanted to show you these boards they use so they don't have to do it directly on the ground. On the ground, which besides being dirty is also very cold. So people use pieces of wood or planks on which they put pieces of cloth to make it easier to slide their hands. And here they put places that are more cushioned. And if I remember correctly, when we went to Lhasa, they told us that a person is required to do 100,000 prostrations throughout their life. And that's why many start from a young age. In fact, talking with the local guide, she told me that children are told they're going to exercise or that they're going to play, and they make them run around the temple so they start their prostrations from a young age. Another common practice is to walk around the temple. Just as we see people walking, many others perform prostrations as they move around the temple. That's even harder. Now we're at the Labrang temple, called Labulang Temple in Mandarin Chinese. This is located in Yehai County in Gannan, in Gansu province. And this really represents the unexplored China that I've been telling you so much about. But today I'm thrilled to be able to bring you with me because it's a real privilege. And this is actually one of the 6 most important temples of Tibetan Buddhism in the Gelug branch. Tibetan architecture is so beautiful with all the colors, the buildings always square, but especially the doors that are hand-carved. They're all wooden and very colorful. I also love the Tibetan language. It's very aesthetic. Combined with their stylized Mandarin, it looks stunning. We can't film in the temples, but they let us into a special area. You can't imagine. Because what is inside this hall are sculptures made with yak butter, which are offerings to Buddha. And originally in Buddhism, offerings were made with flowers. But due to the lack of flowers, the local people decided to use yak butter to create this kind of craft. They also use natural pigments sourced from Mother Nature to color them. And it's incredible the level of detail they've put into each and every one of them. Because from shaping the faces, the features, the beard, the petals of each rose, and it's the same monks who, with patience and dedication, have created each and every one of the sculptures you're about to see. Just look at the detail in the mustaches, the dragon's flower petals, and each one of its scales. At first glance, it's hard to believe this could be yak butter. But if you look down here, there's an unfortunate part. Maybe a candle got too close or maybe it got too hot. And then you can clearly see how the bottom part has melted, for example its little fingers which are already melted. I'm really impressed, and I know I'm in a unique place when I get goosebumps. And that's happening right now. A Tibetan nun just walked by, but we had been told that this temple is only for monks. So I found it strange. I asked the guide and he told me that the nuns have their own monastery, but that they often visit this monastery to pray or to serve in the community. And then they return to their monastery since they are not allowed to live here. That's really interesting because when I went to Lhasa, I didn't see a single nun, but here it seems there are some. Right now we are at the Labrang Buddhist Philosophy University, which is just one of the 6 campuses they have. This monastery is huge, and according to the guide, there are between 300 and 500 students here who decided to come and study Buddhist philosophy in this place. Unfortunately, we can't enter the campus to show it to you. It would be wonderful to show you the prayer halls, maybe the classrooms, but that's reserved for the people who study here. By the way, if you wanted to do it, you could without any problem, since Tibetan Buddhism is not exclusive. You don't have to be Tibetan by birth to be able to participate, since anyone who turns 18 and is willing to learn the Tibetan language is welcome. They came with their phones, they were here on TikTok, and I started talking with them. And they do speak Mandarin, but they didn't really want to stay and chat for long, and I understand they're busy. For them, this is work, it's a lifestyle, and we're a distraction? Maybe. And after having seen the monastery, now we're in the center of Yehai County, where we're going to learn about something known as Tangke. We came to learn how to paint. It's Tibetan painting. It's a painting school for children. All the kids are learning how to paint. He is writing Tibetan and the boy behind him is trying to read it.